It's amazing how one decision can change your life dramatically. By the time I was 23, I was a heroin addict. I was shuffling around with a walker because I'd been recently stabbed over a drug deal that had gone bad. I was committing crime daily to support my addiction. I'd recently got out of hospital, and the experience of being in hospital was horrific. I'd been stabbed over a crack cocaine deal, I'd been taken to hospital, and it was very painful and it was very excruciating. And while I was lying there, pretty much dying, I thought to myself, how the hell did I end up here? When I was 14, my favourite thing in the world to do was to go to the beach with my buddies and go surfing. It was the best thing in the world for me. And I was a 14-year-old, I was noticing girls were noticing me, I was having fun, I was riddled with anxiety, and I wasn't sure what that was. One day there was some older guys on the beach hanging with us, and I was smoking a pipe, and the joint went around, and I had a puff on the joint, and it didn't really do much for me. The next day, one of the older guys came up to me and said, "Did you like smoking that pipe yesterday?" I said, "It didn't do anything." And he said, "Well, why don't you come to my house and we'll smoke some bongs and we'll get really stoned." And I went, "That sounds like a good idea." So I said to my friends, I said, "Hey, this guy wants to take us to his house and give us some bongs and get really stoned." And my friends went, "Nah, I don't think so. We're going to go surfing." So I made the decision not to go surfing and to go to this guy's place and get very stoned. And so I went to his house and I got really stoned and I really liked it. My anxiety left, I felt comfortable, I felt cool, I was hanging with the older kids. We put on some Led Zeppelin, it was the late 70s, and I was feeling pretty groovy. So I kept on doing it. I spent a lot of time in this guy's bedroom, smoking cones and getting out of it. And I became the guy at school as the stoner. And I liked that label. Because before that I didn't know who I was, and I thought, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm the stoner. So I like that. After a couple of years of doing that, it became a little bit boring. So I went looking for other drugs. I said, what's next? And I wasn't someone who, as parents sometimes think, the guy in the bushes is trying to push drugs onto you. I was the type of guy that just went looking for more. So I graduated through the drugs. I started snorting speed. I started taking LSD. I started taking mushrooms. I started drinking a lot of alcohol. And for me, as a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, it was a lot of fun. I was a musician. I played drums in punk bands, and it was a great thing to do. My big thing was to snort a lot of speed, take some LSD before a gig, and halfway through the gig, it would just rocket me to the moon. And I just thought, this is how I want to feel forever. By the time I was 19, I got introduced to heroin, and I started using intravenously. And that again rocketed me to the moon. And I just thought, this is how I want to feel forever. No more anxiety. I didn't suffer from that anymore when I was on drugs. The problem with heroin is it's very highly addictive and it's very expensive and it thrusts you into the underbelly of life. It's a whole new game. So I got addicted. By the time I was in my early 20s, I was using heroin on a daily basis, and I had to start doing crime to get that. And I wasn't a great criminal. I wasn't a good dealer. I was just stealing from my parents, from my family, from my friends, stealing stuff from work, taking to the hop shop, and doing it like that. When I was 25, I went to rehab for the first time because I knew I had a problem, which started me on the cycle of going to rehabs and into institutions. 10 years went by. I was 29. 10 years went by so quickly. I found myself in rehab again, but prior to that, my family had no idea what to do. I dragged them through hell. I'd lost relationships, I'd lost jobs, I'd lost friends, a lot of people around me had died. It was a time when AIDS was quite prevalent and a lot of people were dying from that. And my family had enough, and they went to seek their own help. And the people that were giving them help, they said, well, you've just got to shut the door, let him go. That was the advice. So one by one, everybody in my life just shut the door on me and said, get out. We love you, but you just got to go. So it ended up just being me. I was 29 years old. I became very suicidal. And the voices in my head were just getting louder and louder. And voices were like, kill yourself. You're a drug addict. Nobody loves you. Nobody wants you. Kill yourself. So in Boxing Day 1994, I went back into rehab. I hit a rock bottom. And when I went into rehab, it was probably the 6th or 7th or 8th time I'd been to rehab. And the counsellor, Max, he said to me, what are you doing? He said, you just keep showing up here every 6 months. He said, you need to take it seriously. You need to make a decision in your life whether you're going to sit down here and shut up and listen to what we have to say, or you go and you keep doing what you're doing. So I listened to Max, and I made a decision to stay there. So 8 weeks later, I walked out of there with nowhere to go. My family would never believe that I'm clean because I gave them no reason to believe that I was clean, ever. And so I walked to the beach, and I hadn't been for a swim for a long time, and I jumped in the ocean and I swam around, and I felt great for the first time in a long time. And I spent a couple of hours there, and in that moment, I made a decision to do whatever I should do to stop taking drugs, so which made it a little bit easier for me. So 15 years had passed since that day on the beach, since I said to my friends, hey, you want to go and get stoned with these guys? They made the decision to say, no, we're going to go surfing. I made the decision to do it. I'm just wondering where my life would be today if I didn't make that decision. I was 30 when I got clean. I didn't finish school. I didn't go to university. I didn't really have great relationships. I didn't buy a house. I didn't save any money. I was in huge amounts of debt. I was looking at a lot of jail time. People around me had died. So that was a big chunk of my life that was just gone. So my message today is think very carefully about making a decision if you're ever going to take drugs or not. For me, I made the wrong decision. It led me down that path. That's the tree in a place called Sumatra, which I go to every year in April. I don't go just to look at the tree, I go to surf the waves which are around that tree. And I sit there every evening and I drink a cup of tea and I look at that tree as the sun goes down. And to me, it represents just something very vulnerable sitting out there on its own. And that's how I was as a 14-year-old child. I felt alone. I felt vulnerable. I felt anxious. I didn't know what any of that kind of stuff was. So my message today is, if you have children, is to talk to them about those kind of things. And for me, I didn't feel comfortable talking to my parents. They didn't set it up for me to be able to talk to them about that kind of thing. So that's my message today.